Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Lionel Show. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Kyle Roof, and we're discussing his SEO agency, and more specifically, how he has basically the cutting edge over every other SEO and every other agency because he does testing. So a lot of people know about the idea of testing, the idea that you can go out there and you can test different things in SEO to really know what exactly is working today, rather than relying on other people's guesses and estimates and supposedly tests that they're doing. You actually do the test yourself and you know exactly what's working with SEO. So if you don't know Carl already, he runs the Seo Intelligence Agency along with Dory Friends, and basically he is a very good SEO that does testing, right? So in this interview, what we're breaking down is how exactly he does tests. We're actually breaking down some of the actual test results he's done, and you have to take his word for it unless you test it for yourself. But also you're going to learn obviously how to do the testing yourself. So breaking down those two things, and then we're also breaking down his agency and how he built this up to, I can't even remember now, but I think it was like 10, 13 people or something like that working for his agency. So he's got an SEO agency and he's a prolific SEO tester. So we're going to discuss kind of both of those things, how they tie together and how ultimately being able to test all the time and know what works with SEO helps him scale his agency. So that's what we're discussing in the interview. It's a really good one. I really hope you guys get a ton of value out of it. So with that said, let's jump straight into it. Enjoy. Kyle, hey man, thank you for joining me on the show today. It's cool to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So for anyone that doesn't know you already, do you want to introduce yourself and explain like what it is you do?
Sure. My name is Kyle Roof. I am a reformed lawyer. I practiced law as a trial attorney for 4 years, and I decided that I hated it and I needed to take a sabbatical for a year. And I did the most logical thing, and I moved to South Korea. Cool. And my 1 year sabbatical in South Korea turned into 5 years. And while I was there, I started a web design and development company. I think these are all logical life choices.
Yeah, that just makes sense.
Right? You know, just A to B, really. A to B to C. My brother does web development, and I brought him into the business. And we were basically subcontracting out to a lot of guys that were working in India. And I got the bright idea. I was like, hey, you know what? Why don't we go open a company in India instead of subcontracting? And so my brother was in, we go to India and we go to this town called Dehradun, which is in the foothills of the Himalayas. We start a company, we get employees, and then I leave to go back to the US for a little bit, and my brother is there, and the next thing you know, my brother has been arrested by the police. They've raided our place, they've taken all of our computer equipment, and they've chased off all our employees. And they were saying that we didn't have the right paperwork. And my brother was like, no, we do have the right paperwork because we did this all above board.
Yeah.
And the police chief tells my brother, you have two choices. You can wait till the magistrate comes to sort this out, or you can leave town tomorrow. And my brother goes, well, when does the magistrate come? And the police chief goes, I don't know. So my brother's like, I think I'll leave town tomorrow. So he leaves. And so at this point, we're hemorrhaging clients. And he was doing development. We had just started, I got the bright idea because I'm a savvy businessman, of doing SEO because this could be recurring income.
Sure.
So my brother takes 4 development clients that he can handle. He's like, I can take these 4. And then I'm looking at how I'm going to make money. I was like, well, I'll take the SEO clients. And at that point, I realized I need to learn SEO.
Probably help.
Yeah, it was also at a point in my life, I had invested about $30,000 into this venture, and this was a point in my life when I had $31,000. So I was basically at the end of it, and the options were SEO or bust. And that's when I decided to learn SEO. I was like, I need to learn SEO this very moment. So what ended up happening, I think I did what a lot of people do, that I searched, like, you know, what is SEO? And you get a lot of nonsense. And so then I started kind of piecing some things together, but then you realize they're like ranking factors, and is this a ranking factor? And you get 9 idiots that say yes, 9 idiots that say no, and 9 very learned idiots that say maybe.
Yeah.
So I got the idea.
This, by the way?
This was 2012, 2013.
Okay.
So I decided, I was like, well, what I should do is just create test sites, and then that's probably what people are doing. I was like, I think this is what SEOs do. They create test sites and they can tinker with them. And then that's how I started to learn SEO. And I now have a firm that I co-founded with my business partner. His name is Andrew Steven, and it's called High Voltage SEO. And so we now have this firm going. And in 2015, I was invited to speak at a conference, SEO Rockstars. And they're like, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, well, I could talk about the test that I'm doing, maybe as a refresher for people. Again, thinking that this is what SEO people did.
Yeah.
So I get to this conference and I show like, well, I'm doing these single variable tests, kind of using the scientific method, and this is how I've adapted it to the algorithm. And I realized quite quickly that people aren't doing this. SEOs aren't doing this at all. And so then that's also then, in addition to my agency, then SIA has started, the Seo Intelligence Agency, where every month I do these single variable tests and we present them to the group, and it's a group of SEO professionals that are paying a membership to be in it, to see the test and see the results and get into it. So that's what I do. I have an agency where we have about 50 clients. We have an office in Phoenix, an office in Berlin, and an office in Melbourne. We have 10 employees, and then I also I'm the lead tester for SIA, where I do these single variable tests on the algorithm to figure out what works.
That's cool, man. I'm curious because you're right, most people do not test whatsoever. How did you, I presume a question people have is how do you manage to test while managing 50 clients and having like an agency and like a business that actually does SEO while testing SEO?
The biggest thing is having a staff and a business partner.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. But actually what helped us out there was actually just, and maybe a lot of people miss this, is writing down the processes. Like, how do you do X? Like, write down every step.
Yeah.
Actually have a process together, tweak it, figure it out, and then you can grow your agency where you can have employees doing SEO work because you've got it out step by step. But then, kind of on how to do the test, basically what I'm trying to do there is boil them down to single variable tests. The concept is that we can get an environment in Google and then change one thing, and then we can see whether that is or is not a ranking factor. Is what I'm doing. So what we'll do is we'll start with a fake keyword, so a word that doesn't exist in Google's database. So you pick out a long term, and then you type that in. You'll see a page that says this doesn't exist in Google's results. You can then optimize. Actually, not too bad. But what you get at that point is that any pages you create that are optimized for that term are your pages. Okay. Those are the only ones that exist. So often what we'll do is we'll create 5 pages and we'll index them in our most standard test. And then often what we'll do is we'll tweak the third result.
Okay.
And so then when we tweak that third result for whatever the factors that we're testing, if it goes up, then we know that's a positive factor. Down, a negative factor. No movement, it's not a factor.
Okay, so 5 pages on one domain.
Mostly, yes.
Okay.
So the idea is that then there aren't any other factors, because again, we're trying to eliminate as many factors as we can within the algorithm.
Okay.
There are times in tests where you have to do different domains. So in those situations, we'll buy completely fresh domains. So we're launching 5 fresh domains at the same time, again, in order to eliminate as many factors as possible.
Okay. Interesting, man. How do you come up with the ideas of what to test? I presume it just kind of comes up. Like, as an SEO, you just kind of fascinated.
Sure. I mean, like in the simplest sense, it's like, what are the top on-page factors? What are they? Let's go figure that out. And then you can take it to, do Instagram links past juice. Do they? I don't know. People are saying that they are, but people say they don't. What about links from de-index sites? Can you still pass juice with those? So what we do is, instead of like getting into a flame war that you see on a lot of forums, yes they do, no they don't, I did it, I did it. Well, we actually do it in a single variable environment, and we see if it works or not.
Interesting. Do you get inaccurate results? Sometimes you have to test it multiple times to really truly understand. Most tests will do between 3 and 5 times, because there are times where you see things that are just unforeseen. We are dealing within an algorithm, so that's the whole control factor that we can't deal with. I'm not much of a tinfoil guy, in the sense that Google is tricking SEOs. I don't really think that happens that much, especially when you're in a completely brand new environment. So when we launch these pages, because they are for a term that doesn't exist, Google isn't prepared to game it. Sure.
Versus, it's not payday loans, where they're quite aware of what people are doing in the payday loan space, and so they're really monitoring that. We're going into just a completely fresh environment where I don't think they have the time or energy to monitor. So what we're seeing is the freshest, most virgin environment of the algorithm.
That makes sense. Going back to like when you first started out a little bit, then so you randomly moved to South Korea, which is interesting. That must have been cool. And why did you even start the web design business? We didn't get into that.
So while I was there, initially I was teaching English at a public school.
Okay.
And it was just a 9-to-5 job. And for me, coming from law, where you're working 12, 14-hour days, where 9 to 5 was just a vacation. It's like, this is absolutely amazing. So I had a lot of extra time on my hands, and then I started another business in Korea with a Korean business partner, and we needed to start a website. So I built the website, and in the process of building the website, I built up a team to handle the functions. It was a pretty kind of heavy website. What we actually ended up doing was we opened up a high school in the U.S. in California, and we needed a website to maintain the high school.
All right.
And then that's kind of how everything kind of snowballed from there. So building up a pretty complex site to handle students and registration and classes and stuff like that. And so that was a lot of function, and I realized most websites are not this difficult, and I already built up a team of people that could then build sites, and that's kind of how I got into web design and development.
All right. And you kind of breezed over, like, yeah, we have like 50 clients and stuff like that, as if it was like super easy. You just did it in like a few days. Like,
it's super easy. It takes no time. So I met my business partner online. He actually hired me for a job. And then we worked another job, and then worked another job, and then we had this job that failed miserably. And then he was like, you know what, I think we should start an SEO firm. And I was like, I agree, we should. So we worked together for about 1.5 years before we actually met face to face. We service all sorts of clients. So we go from local to national to international clients, and we have several different products that we offer kind of within each of those areas. But we're boutiques and bespoke, so we don't really necessarily have like packages that are preset, except in some circumstances we do, where we're dealing with maybe a partner that we're white labeling with. Okay, yeah. But otherwise, we usually try to position ourselves in the sense of like we will create a package that'll meet your needs. So most of our proposals are 35-page proposals, with research that's put in, and competition and thoughts and.
Do you leverage the fact that you guys do so much testing and stuff to kind of show that like you're different to other agencies?
That's our tagline. Okay. We don't test on your site. Yeah. The other thing that we go into when we talk to meetings is like, obviously, you're a huge company and you're talking to 3, 4, 5 other agencies. We tell them, ask how many tests are running now.
Sorry to cut off as
and
you
ask
said
to see those tests.
Okay.
Ask those agencies how many tests they're running right now.
Okay. Nice.
And ask to see them. And we know that the answer is 0. They're not running any tests, and they can't show them. And we can show, hey, we're running 20 tests right now. These are the things we're running. So when we say that we don't test on your website, we're serious. We go and we figure it out. And it's that probably really helped our growth a lot.
That's cool. So that's like a USP or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, for sure.
The call quality's gone really bad on us, but we'll keep pushing through, and hopefully it picks up again. But that's cool, man. So you said you're working with all sorts of clients. You're not particularly local ones or national. Like, what was your average client, if you could keep it simple?
Well, for us, we really kind of look at the amount of revenue they're bringing in, because that's going to dictate their marketing budget. When you look at where maybe you want to be in the neighborhood of, say, $2,000 a month for a package, so that's $24,000 a year. Yeah. If somebody is doing $500,000 in revenue, their marketing budget should be at least $50,000. So at that point, at 24, we're half that budget, maybe in a neighborhood where we have a real conversation. So that's probably a fair number or in terms of revenue of where we're looking at, and then obviously higher is better. But we found that that's the sweet spot. Those PBNs, not as much anymore. We're pretty heavy on guest posting right now.
Okay.
And the reason is that our clients like to see those things. So everything we do is very transparent. If clients are comfortable with PBNs, we'd be happy to build them. But most of the clients that we've dealt with at the corporate level are not that down with PBNs when you explain the whole thing.
Sure.
But they understand guest posting. And so we can tell them, hey, these are the 20 options we just found. These are the ones we want to go for, and here's why. And then we allow them to accept or reject those. So most of our heavy link building comes from guest posting.
Okay. And because I guess you're so into testing, with guest posting, does it allow you to control some, like the PBNs are cool, right? Because you have full control over absolutely every aspect of it, which I presume you would like as a testing guy. But with guest posts, are you allowed to still control enough to make it effective, like anchor text and stuff like that?
Well, the biggest thing to worry about is that when you look at certain metrics, domain authority is a decent metric for potential rank.
Yep.
But it assumes good internal linking.
Okay.
So the issue that you look at when you want to get a particular posting, okay, so the DA is 50, and that's great. I'd love to get that link. But you need to look at their internal linking. If they lack internal linking, you're not going to get the value of what we're talking about.
Sure.
If you look at domain authority or trust flow or citation flow or an Ahrefs, you need to see the internal linking. And so what the testing has really done for us is to not just identify a good opportunity, but a good opportunity of where we're going to be placed on that site, so that we know we're going to get value out of that link. I think a lot of people look like, hey, it's a DA 80, that's great. But then the post that they get or the link they get is on an orphaned page. Yeah. Well, through our testing, we know that domain authority isn't an actual thing. If you don't have that internal linking, it's not passing any juice to that page. You've just picked up a link from an orphaned page that isn't going to pass the juice that you're anticipating.
Right. So you're saying if it's a really, really powerful domain and you create a page on it, but it's not internal linked anywhere, then it's useless.
It's useless.
Okay.
It's completely useless. The other thing I would consider too, like when we're talking about guest posting, is that I'm pretty sure that if you buy a list from somebody on Facebook that was like, hey, do you want guest posts? And they give you a list.
Yeah.
Google has that list.
It's probably pretty easy to find.
That's probably a waste of time. So like the guest posting that you need to do needs to be pretty legitimate, where you're doing actual outreach to sites that clearly aren't doing this. That's not their main focus, or at least they're doing it in a way that's palatable to Google. So that's another thing to consider when you're talking about guest posting.
Okay. And I presume you need a decent sized team to do all this stuff, reaching out to people all day long?
I have a full-time person. That's all she does.
Just one person? Okay.
Yeah. So I've got on the team, we've got somebody that's doing scraping basically all day. And then we've got another team member that is doing just outreach all day.
Okay. In terms of scraping, like, what do you scrape for?
We look at topical trust flow as a important measure to filter, and then we'll filter by TF and DA, by trust flow and domain authority as basic kind of starting points. But the other thing we do though, so you've got sites that you filter and they match, and then you have sites that they don't. Something that I realize is that you could have sites that are completely on point for a particular niche, but they just don't have they don't have those metrics yet because it's a new site. So in a way, it's almost like investing in small caps. So we'll actually circle back to those sites and be like, hey, look, we would love to post on your site. And that's actually usually pretty easy to get onto those types of sites because they're not getting inundated with offers. Yeah. They're new, but you can see that somebody's loving the site. They're putting a lot of time and effort into it. It's a real site. They just don't have the metrics yet. I love getting links on those sites because it's easier to do, and you know they're going to grow.
For sure.
So something we do is we kind of have two levels, if you will, like the ones that meet the criteria, and we're going after those. But then we also circle back and do a manual review on those ones that didn't quite make the mark for the metrics that we're looking at to see if they're on point, and then we go after those as well.
That's interesting. I've heard someone, it's more of a white hat SEO guy, and he says he doesn't even check metrics, he just contacts sites to basically get links.
That's fair.
I'm curious then, what is like the most shocking or surprising like test result you've ever had? if you can share that.
Sure. The domain authority one was a big one. So I mean, that's obviously Moz has made a fortune off of the concept of domain authority as a metric.
Yeah.
And there's a real blurry line, I think, between Moz's metric and then the concept of domain authority. And they're two separate things. But the basic idea is that I don't think that there is any intrinsic value to a domain.
Okay.
What we perceive as domain authority is the independent page authorities of a site.
Right.
So, like, I think a page can have page age. A page can have its own links coming in, and they can also then receive the value of internal links, and that page can be very strong. But that doesn't mean that the entire site is strong.
Interesting.
And so I think that was one of the bigger concepts I think that we played with, is the idea of there really is no domain authority. So how we did that was we actually created orphan pages. So we have 5 fresh sites. Each site has an orphan page, and they're all identical. And they all index for a fake keyword.
Sure.
And then for the domain that's in the number 3 spot, we fired a whole bunch of real quality links at that number 3 spot. So if domain authority is a real thing, that domain authority has gone up because we're firing links at the domain. That orphan page should rise.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
Interesting.
So you've got 5 fresh domains. They don't have any links coming into them other than maybe rando scraping things.
Sure.
But they're completely fresh. We've got 5 pages that are indexed. We fire quality links at that number 3 spot that would move anything up, and that orphan page doesn't move. And we've done that test multiple times. So that's telling us that domain authority is not a thing. But through other testing that we've done, we know that domain DA from Moz is actually a really good indicator of rank, a really good indicator of this can rank. So the idea is that DA is a good number, but you need to look at the internal linking that's going on, where you might actually get that link, and then that can kind of lead you to.
So if you check a site and it's got a really high DA, it's got a link from like either a big post or a homepage or something like that, then it's gonna be a good link. But if it's like orphaned, like you're saying, like there's no links to it at all, then it's no good.
I think you're wasting your time, and a lot of those you'll if you're paying for it, you could pay hundreds of dollars for that post.
Definitely, yeah.
And in the end, it's worthless.
Interesting. That should save some people some money, actually.
I hope so. But I that's one of the biggest things that's one of our biggest pushes, or kind of our goals, is that, and there's only so much time. There's only so much money, and the biggest thing we want to help people avoid is wasting time, wasting money on things that aren't going to do anything. Yeah. There are plenty of things you can do that are going to move the needle. Let's not waste time on things that don't. That's really one of our biggest pushes. And when it comes down to it, there's also no point in guessing. There's no point in having opinion.
Yeah.
There's so many things within what we're doing that we can really figure out if it is or is not a ranking factor. So let's go do that. Let's go figure out if it's a ranking factor, and then we don't have to waste our time on it if it's not.
Absolutely.
Or even if we're like, maybe not, then maybe don't do it. Because we know these things for sure.
Sure. So if someone wants to go out there and test, you kind of explained the basic concept where you pick a keyword that has 0 results in Google, and depending on what the test is, like you can create like 5 pages on the same domain and stuff like that, and isolate like one idea, so changing the title tag or whatever.
Sure.
What are common sort of mistakes or something, I guess, or that kind of screw up the test results that people could make when they're doing that?
The biggest mistake is not understanding what you're testing. So you might have the idea of, I want to test domain stacking.
Sure.
Okay, so there are like 37 things involved in domain stacking.
Yeah.
You can't really just test domain stacking. You could do a case study on, does this work? But what you really need to think about before you get a test start is, what are we actually testing? So like in the first point of that, it might be, hey, a link from a high value Web 2.0. Will that pass juice? And then so that's like the very most basic part of it. I'm going to get a thing from a Google drawing, right?
Yeah.
Does that pass juice? So the very first thing you need to look at is, does that thing pass juice? That's step one. So it's not just building this whole domain stack out or some complex SEO process. It's actually breaking it down into individual things and seeing what each of those things are. So most people start off like, I want to test this, and then they have like all these ideas about what they're testing, but they're not testing one thing.
Because you can't isolate what exactly worked. You could have followed the entire process and it was just one little idea that worked.
It was like thing 17, actually. You need to start off on one and work your way back.
Okay.
Because the other thing too is when you're working in closed environments, that's the whole point. Nothing else is going on in this environment. So the idea is that if you do this one thing, you know that that one thing is a ranking factor, or not.
Okay. And how long have you been doing testing now then? Quite a few years.
Yeah, we full time for 2 years now.
So do you have to retest stuff after like 6 months, a year or something, and does the results change often?
That's actually what's really been fun to do. So yeah, I'll circle back and I'll see old tests, and a lot of things I do, especially are on page factors, are some of the easiest things to test. You know, what are the top on page factors? What's interesting and what kind of fits into how I think about SEO is that when you think about kind of a bell curve of things you can do, there's like 80% of SEO that I think is pretty evergreen. You know, you're doing these things, it's here. The stuff on the end, that's where the new fancy techniques come in. We're going to build this or we're going to do that. And those are things that Google is looking at and gets rid of.
Yeah.
So what testing has really shown me over time is that, you know, the vast majority of it is consistent. It's pretty evergreen. There's the weird stuff on the end that people are gaming, and that's what Google's focusing on. So when we circle back, you know, when we test things, the core stuff remains the same.
Okay, so on page is pretty much the same.
It's pretty consistent, yeah.
Okay.
When you're talking about like some crazy things though, so we test old school things. And one thing that we tested 6 months ago was, have you heard of the home-to-home link? So it's the idea of you put your money keyword on your homepage, but the link is to your homepage.
Okay, yeah, okay.
A home-to-home link. And we tested that, and it totally worked.
Really?
Straight up. So the home-to-home link was a home run. It's something from like, you know, SEO 2008. And you'll see it on like super old pages where they've got like all these home-to-home links on it. So when you click on it, it refreshes the page and brings you back to where you are. It totally worked.
That is really interesting. I usually delete them. Like if I'm doing like links to the error pages, I'll delete it off the homepage because I don't want to link back to the same page.
Right, it seems stupid.
Yeah.
It totally worked. It totally works.
Have you tested like kind of scaling up a little bit, like having like 10 of them and seeing if it still works?
That I haven't. We just did it in the one on a home-to-home.
It'd be funny. Just go back to old school strategies, like keyword stuff, 50 keywords linked into the homepage.
You know, there's a lot of like old school stuff. One of our favorite targets is Moz, and earlier this year they had a post that said 8 old school things that don't work anymore. I think from April or May, and we debunked 4 of those. 4 of those old school methods still actually work. And that's what it comes down to. Like, what's amazing is that when you're reading those types of articles, they talk about like this doesn't work because this, but then the next thing you never read about is because we tested it. And here's the test.
It's just whatever Google says that they'll agree with.
I think so. I appreciate Moz, and we rip on them a lot, and we get a lot of value. But you know what? The thing that Moz does that I appreciate is they put themselves out there. You know, they do actually post things, and there are a few things we found that are completely correct. Echo is the idea of you put a link on a page and it passes juice and you get the rank result, and then you remove that link from the page and Google crawls the page even though the link is gone, the value still passes.
Yeah.
That's called a link echo. Moz identified that a couple of years ago and we tested it and it's 100% right. And that link echo will last for 5 to 7 months.
Yeah.
So you get the link. So then what we did is we took that a step further that Moz didn't do, is that we then used link shorteners. And then we fire the link at a test page, it moves, we change the link and fire it at a completely different page, that moves, and the original one stays.
Interesting.
So you can get multiple value out of the same link by having a shortener, and you can just change it within the shortener program, like Capsule Link, for example, where you can go in and change the destination URL.
And that's because the shortener links are 301, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So you get the value of the link multiple times, and then you know it's going to last for 5 to 7 months. So you could conceivably just put your links on a cycle and continue to point them and get the juice value out of it.
Have you tested anything like that? Have you ever taken stuff like that to the extreme and actually tried doing that sort of thing at like a higher level, like you just said?
Well, that kind of stuff I've taken to clients.
Okay.
And I've said, hey, look, we can do this, and this is what we tested, this is what it is, and depending on the client's risk tolerance for that type of thing, most of them are like, yeah, let's do it. So, yeah.
Actually,
most of the
stuff, a lot of people are anti-PBNs and stuff, but there's some clients that you explain it to them like, yeah, if it works, sure. They don't care.
For sure, I have several clients that are down with it. And, though, like, it depends on how you talk about it too. It's like, okay, so we've got our main site. And then we've got people that come to our site that are really interested in this one little thing, and we don't really have a lot of content on it, and we get a little off-brand if we were to talk about it on site. So what if we built another site, fleshed that concept out a little bit, and then brought traffic to it? There's nothing wrong with doing that. That's a PBN.
Yeah, it is.
So that's what major brands do, is that they have niche sites that they don't want to get into that concept so heavily on their own site, so they create another site, gets a lot of traffic, and of course it links back to the main site. Well, they've created a PBN, but it's not a PBN.
I'm pretty sure Viperchill wrote about it a while ago, about all these huge companies. It's a huge group, and they all own all the sites, and they all just put a link back to their main site, and they're crushing it.
I actually consult with one of those companies that they outed.
Oh, really?
And I was like, no, we don't do that. That's crazy. But yeah, no, yeah, I did a kind of a full-scale audit and consultation for one of those companies, and we talked about that strategy that they're doing.
It's clever. So you work with some corporate style clients?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously I can't really name clients, but
yeah.
So I work with, as I said, so I work with some national clients, but then I work with clients that are international. So we have our office in Berlin, and one of the purposes of having that office was to get some clients that are looking to move from like the US to a European market, and we're now getting a few of those clients.
Okay, so what is the SEO like when you're working with like a corporate client? Like, what sort of stuff do you do for them?
The only problems you run into with that are you say like, hey, our URL structure is terrible, and we should change it to this, this, and this, but then it has to go through like 7 pieces of some chain, and it comes back around, and then the answer is just no.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of killing ourselves here, and then they're going to be like, that's the biggest thing. But when you're working with a smaller company, you can say like, hey, our URL structure is terrible, we should do this, and they're like, good point, you're 100% right, and we'll do it. So there's that. The chain of command is often ridiculous, especially coming in as a consultant. So when you come in to consult with a company, you have people that are already entrenched, and you kind of need to make sure like people understand you're not going to steal their job. Like, yeah. I don't want your job, I'm just here to consult on this. I need to make sure like, hey, you're doing a great job, I'm here to support you. So that's easier to do in a smaller company. Once you get to a larger company, you don't really have that interaction. So you still have these people, I think, that think you're trying to take their job when you don't want that job. There's a reason I do SEO, so I don't have to have a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to take your stupid job. I don't want it. But then it's hard to convey that, so then you get a lot of resistance. And I think the larger company you deal with, just the more resistance you have to play with.
Okay.
And then the less it gets done. But then they still continue to pay. That's the other thing too. Like, you can tell them, hey, it's a problem for this, this, this. They'll completely agree, and they won't change it because they can't for whatever reason, but they'll continue to pay you. So
fair enough.
Maybe that works out okay. It's still fresh.
So it's mostly for those guys, it's just like consulting and advising them what to do. For them not to do it, you're not really doing much yourself.
They don't want you to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, they have people in-house to do that work. What they realize, though, is that they're paying this marketing team, but that marketing team does not have the level of SEO expertise that you have. They're bringing you in for the consultation. They don't want the implementation. Okay. Whereas when you're dealing with smaller clients, they want that implementation. They want you to be able to do it.
Got it. That makes sense. So how do you get in front of like the corporate clients? Like local clients is relatively easy enough. You go out there and speak to some business owners. You can call them, email them, whatever. It's not so complex. But like the bigger corporate clients, how do you get like these consulting gigs?
A lot of those come from strategic partnerships. I found that there are digital marketing agencies that can get in front of these types of clients, but that they don't have maybe the SEO expertise in-house.
Okay.
So with our company, we have, I think, 4 strategic partnerships with digital marketing agencies in different niches that are doing different things that they have the ability to get in. So what we've done is we've taken our time to get in with these agencies, and then that gets us in front of these clients. That's probably one of the biggest things we've done that's been successful over the last 2 years.
That makes sense. And then they do a lot of the work for you, kind of. They just bring you in and you do what you do, which is SEO.
Right. There are obvious problems, though. I mean, now you're dealing with extra stages of people to deal with, and then you have to have a pricing structure that's going to work, especially if like they're doing a whole package and you're kind of part of that versus you are handling it and then paying them, giving them a kickback for it. So you have to make sure that the pricing works out well and that the model works out well. Because there's one firm in particular that I work with in San Francisco that works with startups in San Francisco, and they need pretty solid pricing so that they can on the fly go, okay, you need this, it's this much, you need that, it's that much, you need SEO, it's going to be this much, and then it's within a range where then I know I can work with it.
Sure.
So really one of the hardest parts of that whole process is figuring out the pricing that can work in those models.
Okay. So how big is your team these days?
We have 10 employees, and then my business partner and myself.
Okay. What do the people do?
So we've got, as I said, one woman on our team. Her whole job is outreach.
Okay.
We have 2 SEO techs, and they do a lot of grunt work. We've got a developer tech, and he does more of the technical side of things. So like when you need to fix something on a site, he's doing that versus some technical things on the SEO side of running optimization rates and figuring out those kind of things. We have those techs. We've got content writers, and then we have account managers. And account manager is actually the most important part of it. Somebody that's forward-facing that can explain what you're doing, interface with the client, and then kind of come back to you for, hey, the strategy of it.
Okay. So you're not sitting there calling up 50 businesses a day, dealing with all your clients.
God, no. And then there's no way to do that. You know, there's no way to have yourself like that. So you need to, something that we learned is that you have to give enough touches to the client in order to keep them understanding that you're working. So I'm not going to talk to you every day, but you can see that I'm doing stuff. And that's a big hurdle to overcome. How can you express that you're working when you're not talking to them every day?
Yeah.
Because the worst phone call you get is the client that says like, "What have you done the last month?" You know, that's the call you're trying to avoid. So then when you've got regular touches through your account manager, through automated reports that are coming, just so they can see things are happening, and maybe you've got a task system that'll kind of ping them when tasks are done, then that's how they can kind of see that happening. And I think that's what they're looking for. Hey, I'm going to give you $3,000 a month. You know, that's $36,000 a year. They could conceivably hire somebody out of college and probably have them full time in. So why should they pay you that $3,000 a month, or should they just hire somebody out of college to do the work?
Sure.
You know, so what we need to explain is, well, we have the expertise, plus we have a team. So you're not just getting one person, you're getting 9 people, and we're doing all these separate things. But then they can also then see the work, because if they're paying full time, is sitting in the office, they can actually see that person sitting right in the office, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Here's an interesting question. And if you were to start over again, would you start an SEO agency again?
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Interesting.
At the end of the day, I get paid for my ideas. Yeah. And that's a real blessing. You know, I'm not getting paid because I can fix a 404. You know, or I'm not getting paid because I can build a backlink.
Yeah.
You know, really at the end of the day, I'm getting paid for the concept of it. And that's what the agency allows me to do. I think if you're a solo guy, that's one of the biggest problems, or the biggest things to then take the next level, is to have people that can do that grunt work, and then you can just get paid for the strategy or for the ideas. You know, that's probably the hardest next step, is not doing the work yourself. And I'm at the point where I'm really not doing that work myself. My level of work is at the strategy level and managing the people doing the work. So I'm getting paid for my thoughts, and it's a great thing.
That's really cool. I presume something that helped with achieving that was you mentioned earlier about creating processes and really breaking down step by step how to actually do SEO so other people can do it. Does that tie into it a lot?
Oh, for sure. And that's actually where my business partners come in a huge way. I think I'm probably more on the strategy side of things because I'm running the tests and I'm figuring out what's going on. But then, if it were up to me, we'd be spending tens of thousands of dollars a month per client, But he's able to take the processes and be like, okay, this is what we know works, and then turning it into an actual process.
Got it.
We really turned a corner about a year and a half ago, where what we did was we sat down, we figured out, okay, we want to do this one thing. Who does this work? So it's 15 minutes of this SEO tech, and it's an hour of this content writer, and then a senior manager needs to oversee it for 20 minutes. So then we actually market valued out that cost. We're only paying that person maybe $10 an hour, but the market value is $30. So then we calculate out at 30, at 50, and then the account manager is 150, and then we figured out what that actually costs and how much time it takes. So then even though we're putting boutique packages together, we're doing it according to what we're actually doing and how much time it takes. And then at the end of the day, you throw on like an expertise multiplier, say 20% on top of that. So then at the end of the day, if you have to negotiate that 20% based on you need to give somebody a kickback for the introduction, or they want to negotiate the price a little bit, you've got that expertise margin that you're negotiating, but at the end of the day, you're making money because you priced it out on market value.
Got it.
That was a big turning point for us. And we also figured out exactly, this one task takes 120 minutes, but these are the different people that are working in that 120 minutes, and that was a big thing for us.
I like it, yeah. I think a lot of people, especially myself, when I started out, like you kind of make up the pricing. Someone asks you for
how
SEO,
do you price this?
$1,000.
$500. Yeah, exactly. $450. I can go lower. But then at the end of the day, and then you're like, well, we're going to do this, do that, and do that, and do that. But then at the end of the day, what we realized is we didn't price out what those things actually cost.
Yeah.
Even if I did it myself, what would it actually cost? It's 5 hours of my time to do these things. Well, maybe my time is worth $200 an hour. Well, that's $1,000, but I'm only charging them $500. Yeah. Well, now I'm really losing money.
Absolutely.
So then the idea is pricing things appropriately for what you're worth, what employees are worth, and then if you can make it work price-wise. But I think that's where most people probably fail, is they lose money and they don't realize they're losing money.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, I'm making $1,000, but what they don't realize is that they're actually losing money on that $1,000 because of the amount of time that things take and the amount of time that they're actually putting in themselves.
Yeah, that's very true. What is I don't know, say 3 big mistakes you've made over the last few years of like building up your agency or just doing SEO in general?
3 big mistakes. The first one was not pricing out things from the start. Yeah. Was doing exactly what you mentioned. Somebody's like, hey, so you pitch it and they love it and they're like, how much? And you're like, you're trying in your mind, you're like, how much will this person pay?
Yeah.
That's probably not the right way to do it. 2 other mistakes though. Not sure. There's no reason you can't go after a huge client. And there's no reason that you can't contact them. You know what I mean? You can contact huge clients. So you can figure out somebody that's in their marketing department, and there's no reason you can't reach out to them. It doesn't matter
really.
It doesn't matter that they're huge, and it doesn't matter they've got a marketing thing of 20. You can find a mistake that they've made, that they're doing online. You can contact them and just let them know. And you might have to do that 20 times, but if you do that 20 times to 20 huge firms and one comes back with, hey, we'd like more information, you just made a huge client. So sure. Don't think that you can't go up. Something that I realized is, say you're at that $500 level. That first time you say, I'm $1,000, it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
You know,
I had to
it's
email
really
it.
hard.
I didn't have the guts to say it in person.
Exactly, right? Like, and it's $1,000 set. You know, but the first time somebody says yes to that $1,000,
Yeah.
well, that recalibrates yourself. Now you're at the $1,000 level. So then you start having this anxiety about like, well, you know, I really think I'm worth $1,500, and I price this out. It's a $1,500 thing, and then that becomes hard. But then once you say $1,500, that's an easier thing, and that's kind of how it ratchets up. You know, so don't land that client. As soon as you say $3,000 for this, and the person says yes, now you're at that $3,000 level. You know, so that's kind of, you could. I think you really could, so long as you're providing the value. It's not just $500 of value and I'm trying to charge $3,000, but you're actually doing that service level. But you can honestly say like, this amount of service, this value is actually worth $3,000. You could skip up, and that's a hard thing to figure out.
What is the difference in value then between a $500 package and a $3,000 package? I presume it's like you calculate based on your cost of your time and everything as well now, but that's not the value, right?
Well, no, because then there's also the expertise. So you probably need a bunch of those $500 ones to actually figure out what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, like what, you know, so it's one thing to know like this is or is not a ranking factor, but then there's also the knowledge and understanding of how just a project works. You know, I talk about when I talk to people that are new into SEO, and they're like, how can I time a project, or how can I give a reasonable amount of time? This project's going to take this amount of time. Usually, what I tell them to do is look at the competitors and how many domains that they have linking in to their pages.
Yeah.
So let's say they have 10 domains. Now go back to your process of what you can do in SEO and how many links can you get from individual domains in a month? And it's probably 2 to 3 for the brand new guy, maybe 2. So if you need 10, all things being equal, and you can build 2 a month, that's a 5-month project. Now,
nice.
month number one is strategy and audit. Month number 2 is on page and getting where it needs to be, and then you've got that 5 months. So that's actually a 7-month project. That's how you can then estimate how long that thing's going to go. Now, what are those things going to cost? How much is it going to cost for you to build 2 links a month? Figure that out. The on-page, figure that out. The strategy, the audit you might do, figure that out. And then you can price it out from there. So I think that's where the value comes from then, is that knowledge. And you probably need a few of those $500 clients then to feel good about that knowledge to then price it up. Because then you get the client like, how do we accelerate this?
Yeah.
Well, how do you accelerate it? You know, figuring out how to accelerate it, that's where that knowledge comes from. Seeing the pitfalls that happen in a project or an SEO project, that's where that expertise comes from. So that's then how you ratchet up your price, I think, is in that knowledge.
Absolutely. Hey, before we wrap it up, I think you were talking about 1 or 2 more different test results you were discussing before we started recording. Am I right?
Sure.
Is it 1 or 2? Do you want to jump into them? I think people might want to hear it. I don't remember.
I have so many. One thing that we talked about was, so Google talks about unique content, right?
Yeah.
Google just wants unique content, fresh content. You know, we want the most unique thing that's going on the web. So my thought process as soon as you read that is like, well, how much unique is unique? And so we tested that. And you may have seen it. Have you ever seen that little blue line where it says like we filtered out these results because we think they're the same?
Yeah.
You know, you get the little blue line. So you can get past that filter, the duplicate content filter, with 51% unique content. So that's what we tested and figured out. Your page only needs to be 51% to get past that threshold for Google's uniqueness, which is a pretty low bar. So when Google was talking about like, hey, we need fresh new things, they need 51% unique. Super easy to do. When we were talking about previously, I worked on a project about 1.5 years ago where we basically did a really complex manual spin. But we launched 6,000 pages, 3,000 of which are on the first page of Google for their terms. It's all the same content. You know, it's spun very well through a manual spin. but it's not unique by any stretch of the imagination. But it gets past that 51%, and they rank. The other thing that we looked at, though, not that long ago, were images. Unique images, and we tested stock photo versus unique photo, and stock images win. And where I think that comes from is that Google knows what that image is. It already understands it, it's already processed it, so then it can index it and rank it. Where if it's a brand new image, it doesn't understand what that image is. It's going to take a time for it to understand that this image is actually this thing, because Google can't actually see anything.
Yeah.
So it's a really funny thing when Google talks about what it wants and what it prefers and what's the best web experience. But then at the end of the day, it needs to understand things, and the way it understands things, it's already been processed. So the content doesn't need to be very unique, and you can get by just fine with stock photos, like stock photos. Well, in those tests, we were just using the ones that are already indexed in Google under free licenses, and those will outrank a completely fresh new image.
That is pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's fun stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool. Even with images alone, imagine there's just tons and tons of tests you could do to play around with different things.
We've done a lot of fun things, like putting words in an image. So you got an image of a bicycle, this is a bicycle, and then running it through AdWords. Because the idea is that AdWords can look at a page and give you keyword suggestions.
Yeah.
But AdWords can't read that.
Interesting.
AdWords can't give you the suggestion that this page is about bicycles when it's got the image on it and the word says bicycle. It can't even give you the suggestion when it's a bicycle and no words. So Google really isn't looking at those images the way that I think that they want you to think that they are.
That's cool. Hey, before we wrap it up, is there anything else you want to cover, or final words of wisdom or anything like that? But I appreciate you joining me today, man.
Oh, thank you for having me. I think the biggest takeaway that I've got in SEO is that there's really no point in guessing.
Sure.
There's really no point in opinion. There's such a small area that's actually kind of the opinion area of SEO. I think so much is testable if you think about it the right way. If you put together what we are actually looking at, what we're actually trying to test, and then you form a test to test that one thing, you can actually figure out what's actually going on in SEO. And there's no point in getting angry about, what this person's opinion is or that person's opinion. Yeah. Let's just go figure it out. And that's what I've been doing for the last several years, and it's benefited me, not in just even having this testing group, but then also my own practice, where I can, when clients ask you, what should we do? Should we do this or that? You know what I can tell them if I don't know? Is I tell them, we'll run a test. So there are several times with clients, they're like, real complex questions. Should we do our URL structure like this or like that in this particular situation? I don't know. Let's test it. Let's actually find out. And clients love that. Because now we're saying, like, hey, we're going to run a test just for you. You're going to get knowledge your competitors don't know, and you're going to have an edge. Let's go figure it out. And clients love that. So if you nail that sort of thing, I think it's not just good for your own knowledge, but then you can also take it into those kind of situations and I think improve your own practice.
I presume some tests, though, like the on-page ones you mentioned, are relatively simple to test, but some of them must be very difficult to even come up with an idea of how exactly you can test it. Yeah,
sure. And you'll get halfway through a test, and especially when you're dealing with links, and you'll screw it up. And you'll realize that this has been a complete waste of time, and here's why. But those errors then also lead to other tests or more knowledge. There are several times where tests have just been complete busts, but the knowledge that we've gained, I was like, oh, that's how this might work, and then it leads to other testing.
Yeah.
So the failed tests are usually just as valuable as the ones that are successes or that we've gotten something out of.
Okay. Cool, man. I don't want to cut you off. Have you got any?
Cool? No.
Where can people find you if they want to see some of your test results or connect with you, ask you some questions or anything like that?
Sure. So my agency email is my site is hvseo.co, highvoltageseo.co, and people can always email me through that. I'm Kyle at hvseo.co, and feel free to send me any questions. And then the SIA, the testing group that we're in, that's the Seo Intelligence Agency.com.
Okay.
Is how to get to that. And it's a monthly subscription kind of thing where people can get in. What's really great about the group too, it's not just the test, but it's a community. So people are on Skype every day, people are on Facebook every day. But mainly the Skype group is super active. But like, has anybody played with this? And what you get, because the mindset of the people are people that understand the idea of testing, and not just opinion. So when somebody asks like, hey, has anybody played with this thing? It's not just like, they actually tell you, yes, I've done it, and this is what I've done with it, and this is what I'm doing with it. So you get real practical things. Even if it's not specifically test related, you get real practical advice, because it's people that are just doing SEO. That's always fun to be with.
Definitely.
Not just people that are thinking about SEO or pondering, but people that are actually doing SEO and doing it every day.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you again for joining me today. It's been fun. I've got some good nuggets myself.
Good stuff. Thank you for having me.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you guys next week.